Right, hundreds have rallied outside Scotland Yard this week as well, as the Met Police stand accused of being invisible at protests in relation to the Israel-Hamas war. The campaign has called for tougher action on hate crime after pro-Palestine protesters shouted jihad chants last week and arguing the police should be making arrests, not excuses. Now, there's a lot of debate about what jihad actually means and what from the river to the sea means and what the police should be doing. So joining me now is former Met Police Detective Peter Bleksley. Peter, thank you so much for coming in and joining us today. Now, obviously, this is the third week, I think, of these marches, isn't it? What do you make of the way they have been policed so far in the run-up to today?
Well, in the corridors of policing power at the Met, they're quietly very pleased with themselves in how things have gone for the past 2 weeks, because neither of those huge protests that had more than 100,000 people there had descended into violence. We didn't see the Strand being smashed. We didn't see Trafalgar Square being trashed. So in that regard, with huge numbers of people, they're quite content with how things have gone. Although, of course, excuse me, we've seen a shift today because there was a lot of criticism about the non-intervention by police, particularly last week, with people holding signs in support of Hamas, for example, and, of course, using the word jihad, which, as we know, is open to a couple of different interpretations.
Yes, indeed, yes. There's a live footage we're watching now. This is actually happening now. This is in London, I believe. So
yeah, so of course,
calm.
I hope against hope that we have another largely peaceful one. But it will be very interesting to see if the police's actions follow their words with regards to intervention. Because the fear is of the police that when they go in and form some kind of sterile corridor, for example, separating people so that they can get to an offender and they then arrest them, the concern is that something can escalate very quickly. And then some of the renter mob, who do undoubtedly go on these marches, who might not be actually as committed to the cause as some others are and are pretty much spoiling for a fight, it can be a tinderbox, and that's what the Met want to avoid.
The one thing I think a lot of people would ask, I mean, thankfully, these are live scenes. It does look very peaceful so far. But why do the police appear to treat some marches, such as pro-Palestine, BLM, climate change activists, with kid gloves, where demonstrations and marches on more right-wing causes maybe, and, even football fans making their way to an away football ground are treated, not well at all? What's the difference? Why does that happen?
I go to football virtually every Saturday of the week.
And so do I, yeah.
and I've had many, shall we say, robust manhandling by police.
Exactly.
But it kind of goes with the territory, unfortunately. There's inconsistencies, I think, that you've just pointed out. And many people will say, why is it? For example, if somebody is to stand up in a football stadium this afternoon displaying a sign in support of Hamas, there will be pretty swift and robust action, that I can guarantee. However, it's not been the case, for example, last week. Well, there is an inescapable fact of certain policing that in those corridors of power that I alluded to, there is a liberal, fluffy wokeness amongst many. And they're more about perception than policing. How is this going to look in the papers?
So they're more worried about virtue signalling than actual potential violence?
Well, we know, of course, because in the recent past we've had cars painted with rainbows. We have one police service even spent public money on rainbow-coloured tins of lip balm, which, of course, is utterly unjustifiable and ludicrous. However, Sir Mark Rowley in the Met has said there'll be no more taking of the knee, there'll be no more dancing of the Macarena, for example, albeit that wasn't Met officers. And in that regard, I think there has been some element of progress. We certainly haven't seen police officers with their faces painted with the Palestine flag, for example, have we?
Not yet.
And no, we haven't, and I sincerely hope we don't. I'm not being flippant, because, of course, on many pride marches, we see police officers in full uniform with their faces painted with rainbows. So there needs to be consistency from the police. They need to wear on their faces or on their uniforms nothing other than what is issued to them. They can't be going to show allegiance to one particular faith, colour, creed, sexuality or whatever, because then people who don't adhere to that might think, well, are the police here for me or not?
Just as one final quick question, we heard very recently from Jack Carlson up in Birmingham, that lovely interview with the lady Ruth Jacobs, who says it, you know, the Jewish community are scared on the streets at the moment. Do you think with potentially as divisive marches as the pro-Palestine one and the Hamas and the Jihad, do you think these should be going ahead at all, these kind of marches?
Well, we're both wearing poppies, and Remembrance Sunday is but a fortnight away. I sincerely hope we do not see marches like that across that weekend.
OK, right. Thank you very much. That's Peter Bleksley. Thank you very much for coming in and joining us this afternoon.